That was a long movie. The weekend is over, and everybody, including their mama, has already seen the Justice League Snyder Cut. And there are two type of people right now. You have those who are like, this movie is a gift from God. And then you have people who are like, ugh, what, what, why, why is the Flash funny in this film? Why is it that every time Wonder Woman shows up, they play the same music? Steppenwolf? Everybody has already put out reviews from the day of till now. So the question is, why watch my video? Well, if you've seen my previous video on WandaVision, you know that I'm not up with the hype, okay? I'm going to say it how it is. But there's definitely some confusion out there for folks who have not seen the movie yet. And guess what? They're going to watch a video where they're just totally on this film, like making it seem like it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And then you have people who are just going to like dismiss it because, oh, well, I heard this happen or I heard that happen. So look, I'm going to just give my opinion on this film. There's no real direction. I'm just kind of putting things out there. But hey, if this can help you make a decision to watch this film, then that's cool. If not, whatever. Please leave a like, a comment, subscribe, or whatever. But yeah, again, I have no stake in this, okay? I ain't got no money. I ain't got nothing coming my way. I'm getting nothing out of this but views. So I think I can give more of an honest opinion on this film than most people, because there is definitely some bias out there. So let's get on with this review. It's not really much a review, but I will say there might be some spoilers, so I'll try to keep that at a minimum. Two major things I have to get out of the way. One, the time, and two, the aspect ratio. So, with the time or length of the film, that is, it is a long movie. In fact, it is 4 hours long. 4 hours long. However, for me, it did not feel like a long movie. It definitely kept my interest, but I understand for people who don't want to spend half a workday watching a movie. But the great thing is that, not only is it available on HBO Max, so you can watch and go as you please, but fortunately for the viewers, the movie itself is broken up into 6 parts. So you can stop at part 3, part 4, or part 5, or whatever, and not necessarily have to watch the whole movie through. So I think that's really great, because I know if this film didn't release back in 2016, 2017, yeah, there would definitely have been some complaints. And it would be justified. But I think that the 4-hour film works best because it definitely helps out characters like Cyborg, Flash, Aquaman, and definitely Steppenwolf. So I definitely think that those characters and the story benefit from the long length of the film. But again, I understand for people who are just like, really? 4 hours? Totally understand. There's the aspect ratio. Definitely another complaint that is justified, whether had it been released back then or even now. Because yes, it is 2021. There's no reason why we should have black bars on on a movie. I have a buddy of mine who just bought a $2,000 TV. $2,000 TV. $2,000 TV. And the minute he watched, he's like, what the heck? What is this? I'm trying to do like an Appalachian. He's from West Virginia. Okay. But anyways, yeah, that was a complaint. But I explained to him that this was his art direction, yada yada yada. So yeah, expect the film to not be in widescreen. Also, shout out to my boy TC. If you're expecting to watch the Justice League Snyder Cut widescreen on your nice expensive TV, well, fortunately that's not the case. But what about the film? Is it good or is it bad? Is it worth the wait or not? I say yes and no. Yes, because this is the film that fans have been wanting to see for a very long time. And for the people who have been campaigning for this, the people who have been working hard for 4 years, yeah, it has definitely been worth the wait. But this should have been the movie that was released back in 2016. This should have been released back then, because now we could be talking about either Justice League Part 2 or even Justice League Part 3. So in that sense, I don't think it was worth waiting this long. There are definitely some people out there who are expecting this to be an entirely new film. No, that is not the case. This is not a new film whatsoever. So again, don't go into watching this film and expect that it's an entirely new movie. No, it's pretty much the same, just different at the same time. What makes it different, and in my opinion better, is the fact that it definitely does a better job with characters like the Flash, Aquaman, and especially Cyborg. If you haven't heard it, if you haven't read it, Cyborg is the heart of the film. And in fact, you can even kind of see him as a main character. Me personally, I think the Flash is not so much the main character, but I personally think he stole the show. Okay, he definitely stole the movie in my opinion. There's a particular scene towards the end where I was just like, how did Ezra Miller not rant about this for the last few years? You have Cyborg, who's making all these allegations, whether they're true or not. But Ezra Miller was definitely robbed. Okay, he was robbed from his moments, his glory. I am not kidding you when I say this, that The Flash is so much better in this film than the previous film. And how can I say it without spoiling too much? For one, they don't make him look like an absolute goofball. He's still a goofball, but not the goofball who apparently the only thing he's been doing for the last few years is pushing his enemies. This is not the type of Flash who apparently doesn't know what to do. No, this Flash is very much like he's supposed to be. He's supposed to be funny, but he knows when to be serious at times. And there's definitely moments in this movie where you really get to see him show off his powers. And then there's Aquaman, where in Justice League, I just thought he was just a total bro. But here, he's just more of a hard ass. You know, there's a reason why he's the way he is. I definitely like this version of Aquaman. And then, of course, you have Cyborg. As far as his character in the previous film, oh yeah, it was definitely wrong of a lot of things. And I don't understand. I don't understand if it was Whedon. I don't understand if it was WB, AT&T, or whoever. But how is it that they can take this film and say that it's unwatchable? And that's something that was said apparently. And then give us the Joss Whedon cut. Like, how, what? Like, I'm telling you, there's a big difference between those two films. And I will say this, because the major complaint about the Justice League film was that these characters should have had their own solo films first, which I do agree to, yes. While as much as I know who the Flash is, and Aquaman, Cyborg, and all those characters, there's definitely a whole generation of kids and teenagers and even adults who still don't know who these characters are. So a film would have been a great way to introduce these characters. However, in my opinion, Zack Snyder does a good job of introducing these characters. Granted, again, I would have preferred a solo film first. We get to know who the Flash is. We get to know who Cyborg is. We get to know who Aquaman is. It's not the way a solo film would do, but you get to know enough of them to be like, okay, I know what this person's about. Okay, I get their purpose. Okay, I get why they're here. So, in my opinion, the 4-hour film does a good job introducing all these characters. Don't expect that there's going to be these mind-blowing cameos, or that the new footage is going to just totally change the entire direction of the DC universe, or cinematic universe, that is. The cameo is very short, much like the extra footage. I thought it was cool. It was a nice addition, but don't expect something extraordinary. Not saying that you shouldn't. I mean, yeah, who wouldn't want to expect the best? But that's not the case here. There are definitely people who are going to dismiss this film because, well,
I was under the impression that so-and-so was going to show up.
Or
I was under the impression that this extra footage was going to do this and that. And now, because it did not meet my expectations, this movie sucks now.
Well, again, I'm just kind of giving a heads up here. What about the movie or the new footage? Huh? If it's very much the same movie, then what's the point in watching? Well, it still goes from point A to point Z. You still have your Superman resurrection scene, and you still got your battle with Steppenwolf. But let's take, for example, the Superman resurrection scene. In the 2016, 2017, whatever Justice League film, Batman and Wonder Woman were going back and forth on it. You know, Batman was like, we should do this, while as Wonder Woman, she's like, don't do that. However, in this film, the Snyder cut that is, they're like, well, it'd be nice to kind of have Superman around, so it's more of a team decision on that. And me personally, I thought it was a lot better. And then there's another example in the film wherein Batman is kind of a bit of a dick, and he calls out Wonder Woman's dead boyfriend. In this film, you can sense that there's unity. You can sense that there's teamwork involved. You can sense that these characters do like each other, or they're trying to like each other, and they're trying and they are working together. That's what I like about this film, is the fact that they work as a team, whereas in the previous film, it was very disorganized. You know, what about the Joker and all this? I'll say this. That was probably my one disappointment with the film, is the lack of nightmare scenes. Not much of a spoiler, but yeah, if you're expecting to see a lot of nightmare scenes, you're not going to get that here. But, the nightmare scenes that they do give us is satisfying enough. But, definitely leaves a lot to desire. I will say this about Jared Leto's Joker. Much like the Suicide Squad, he has been robbed yet again when it comes to screen time. I feel, and I could see that he could be an amazing Joker. But yet again, he has very little screen time. But the bits that you do see of him, you can get the idea that you could see him as a Joker, at least in my opinion. You don't have to worry about the damaged tattoo or the fancy Instagram drug lord attire. No, it's a very Joker-esque character, right? But I'll just say this much: does it redeem his character? Partially. But again, if you've only seen 10 minutes of him before, so it's kind of almost the same, just that in this version, he's very much more like the Joker. At least that's what I can say. R rating. Some people are like, oh, great. DC being dark as usual. And I could say this. Throughout the film, I was joking with my buddy, and I was like, oh, watch, you're going to complain about how dark this film is, or they're going to talk about how dark this scene is. But I will say this. There were about 2 times where I could be like, ooh, oh God, that is a little dark. But it's not like, let's say, Justice League Apocalypse War, where you see brain matter and guts all over the place. No, it could be a little violent. It could definitely be a bit bloody. And, there's definitely some cuss words out here. But if you're expecting to see Wonder Woman topless or see Batman, naked again, you're not going to get that here. So, don't be too concerned about the R rating, but when you watch the film, you can understand why it's rated R. And there are some people out there asking, well, what about those awful lines from the Whedon cut? Like when Batman says that his superpower is that he's rich. Or what about the "do you bleed" line? There are some scenes in this film where I thought that was from the Whedon cut. But no, that was from Zack Snyder. But what makes it tolerable, or at least better in my opinion, is also the choice of music. Music makes a huge difference in this film. It definitely makes a huge difference in the tunnel scene, and it definitely makes a huge difference in the final battle. And there were times in this film where I'm watching just about the same scenes, but because of the music, it got me super pumped. But I mean, of course, there's some added footage here and there, but I was like, what? I can only imagine the hype. I could just imagine the audience, just getting loud and excited during certain scenes in the tunnel scene or during the final battle, because it just fits. It gets you in the moment. It makes you feel, and it makes you want to root for these characters. It makes you want to be like, yeah, go get him, Batman, or yeah, go get him, Superman. The music makes a huge difference in this film. There's the CGI of the film. There's some people who are going to complain about the CGI. There's definitely a bit of a difference here. Well, actually, there's a bit of a major difference here than that of the Whedon cut. Like, for one, of course, Steppenwolf. I would much prefer a humanoid version of Steppenwolf, and I'm not talking about the Whedon version of him. No, I just would have preferred just a man, much like he's represented in the comics, as opposed to this big Megatron-looking alien. But I will say this: the character is done much better here than the previous film. There's definitely a motive, and a lot of people feel for Steppenwolf. Like, they're like, oh, that kind of sucks for the guy. And I will say this, he kind of does look adorable at times. There's a few scenes where you close up and you see him all pound. You're like, oh, he just wants to impress his nephew. And you kind of feel bad for the guy. I mean, you know, you have WB who are like, oh, your Steppenwolf looks too scary. And then you have other people who are like, oh, poor little Steppenwolf. Aww. But again, going back to the CGI, that was a major complaint from the previous film, where in the previous film, in the final battle, there was just this huge red sky scene, you know, everything was red, and I know a lot of people, to them, it was a huge eyesore. For me personally, I liked it only because I thought it was very much like in the comics during like Crisis, where, you know, when something, well, like when a crisis happens, the sky turns red. So that, I like that personally. But yeah, that's not the case here in this film. It's just supposed to be like it was supposed to be originally, where the sky is just, well, regular, and it does look good. And you know, and so, if anything, it looks better. I don't mind the direction they were going with the previous film. But for people who are complaining about that, rest assured, you're not gonna have to worry here. You're gonna see a fight scene with less red than the previous film. Cyborg still looks like Cyborg. There are certain characters in the film, which I'm trying not to spoil here, but I will say this, yeah, you can tell that the CGI wasn't fully polished. There was a few scenes that you can tell where they were like, well, they kind of just threw that in there. They didn't necessarily need this person to fill the role, or they didn't necessarily need somebody. As a matter of fact, one good example of that is like Granny Goodness. Really starting to highly suspect that Granny Goodness didn't actually hire an actress, and she is fully CGI. Because there's a particular scene in the movie where she is walking, and I'm like, that's not a real person, is it? That's all CGI there. But characters such as Desaad, Darkseid, and other characters, they look great. Then there is the story. And keep in mind, this is supposed to be Zack Snyder's original version. So in this film, there are certain things that are not going to make sense in the Aquaman film, or even technically, well, possibly even the Flash film coming up. But one notable difference is Mera. Not a huge spoiler, but she definitely has an accent in this film. And I'm like, yeah, you didn't have that. You didn't have that accent in that film. But yeah, it's very noticeable in this version of the film. But yeah, there's some people who are just gonna complain about that. They're like,
wait a minute, but that didn't. If that happened here, then that should happen to Aquaman. Blotto, this movie's trash.
Like I said, this is supposed to be the original version of the film. Okay, so is this film good or not? And based on what you've heard me talk about, you can get an idea that this film, to me, is good. And I do find it to be not only good, but superior than the film we got back in 2016. Not to say that the 2016 was god-awful garbage. I mean, it's very close to that, because there are two scenes that I would have actually liked in this film. But because it wasn't from Zack Snyder himself, of course he's not going to include it. And those two scenes were the, well, for once, not so much the scene, but the music. I definitely liked the score, the soundtrack, whatever they used when the Flash, you know, was running slow, and you know he was gonna give Wonder Woman her sword back. And then of course the scene in the end, or the after credit scene, where you have the race between the Flash and the Superman. I thought that was pretty cool. I thought that was a nice touch. But other than that, there was nothing else I really liked about that film that I would have liked to include in this film. But again, this film, the Snyder Cut that is definitely superior than the Justice League film. But if you're not a huge superhero fan, or you're not so much into DC Comics, or you're just not a DC fan in general, I will say this. You probably are not going to want to put yourself through 4 hours of this film. Because if you already made up your mind about how you feel about DC and everything, you're probably just going to hang on to the negative. And again, that's not for everybody. I just feel like that's the case for most people who don't like DC films to begin with. And watching a 4-hour film is not going to help your case. It's really not. There's no reason why you should stick on. Now, is this movie going to change your opinion on the DC Universe? I don't think so. I really don't, because it's still going to give the idea that WB or whoever is in charge of these films, that they don't have any direction. And you can kind of tell here. You can tell that what they put out in comparison to what should have been put out, yeah, you're going to think to yourself, wow, way to mess that up, WB. I personally know people who are just not fans of DC films whatsoever, but after watching this film, they definitely had a different opinion, at least about the Justice League film. They definitely give it praise, but that may not be the case for everybody who watches this film. If you are willing to give this film a chance, then yeah, I say go for it. You know, I would say do not watch the whole film in its entirety, especially if you're not really feeling it, especially if you just came home from a long day of work. I would say set your expectations a little bit lower. Not low because of how bad it is, but your expectations that, oh, we're going to have this amazing battle with Darkseid and the New Gods, and we're going to get, you know, all these cameos, and they're going to introduce all these. No. Just, you know, let's tone it down a bit here, okay? Remember, point A, point Z, the same. Just a whole lot of footage that definitely changes it up a bit. If not so much a bit, a whole lot of it. I'll say that. But yeah, again, to me, it's a great film. For people who are definite naysayers, I can at least say that it may be a good film to you. But if you're just going to find reasons to hate this movie, then you might as well just not watch it at all. Well, I guess reviews kind of have to end with like a rating, right? Right? I don't know. So what would I give this film? In comparison to that of the Justice League film that we got in 2016, 2017, I'd give it like a 13 out of 10. But it's just, if it was its own standalone film, I would give it probably an 8 to a 9 out of 10. A 9 because of, well, you know, to me it was a great film. But an 8 because, damn, it's a long film. Yeah, and if I had watched this first, I probably would have a different opinion about it. I think a lot of people would have a different opinion about this film had it been released before. I will end this video like this. That I think now that this movie has been out, people should be a little bit more lenient, or at least people are being a little bit more lenient. They're a little bit more fair with their critiques on this film, because it's not like a traditional release film in theaters. And again, it's a film that was released on HBO Max. And of course, this is a film that was supposed to be released 5, 4, 6, whatever years ago. So there you go. That's it. The end of this video. I never know how to end these videos. But again, if you like the video, go ahead and like, subscribe, yada, yada, yada. And hopefully we get a Justice League Part 2. And eventually a Part 3. Aww.